Hi everyone. Welcome. We're so glad you're here. We hope you're doing well and having a great day wherever you're joining us from. Before we dive into today's message, let us know where you're listening from. Drop it in the comments section below. Now let's get into it.
Today, we are talking about obedience, not partial obedience, not delayed obedience, not selective obedience, but complete obedience to God. In Deuteronomy 28:1, Moses speaks to the children of Israel and says, "Today I am giving you the commands of the Lord your God. You must be careful to obey all of them completely. If you do that, He will make you greater than any other nation of people in the world." This verse begins with a powerful word: today, not tomorrow, not when it's convenient, not when we fully understand everything. Today, obedience is always demanded in the present. God does not bless intentions, He blesses actions aligned with His word. Moses makes something very clear: the elevation of Israel was not going to come from strength, numbers, intelligence, or strategy. It would come from obedience. God tied greatness to obedience, not sacrifice, not rituals, not appearance, obedience. But here is where many believers struggle. We love the promise of greatness, but we wrestle with the process of obedience, because obedience requires submission, humility, and trust, especially when God's instructions don't make sense to us. Now let's look at 1 Samuel 15:22. Samuel confronts King Saul after Saul disobeyed God but still tried to appear spiritual. Samuel says, "What makes the Lord happy? Is He more pleased when people offer burnt offerings and sacrifices to Him, or is He more pleased when people obey Him? Listen, it is better to obey the Lord than to offer sacrifices to Him." This is one of the most sobering statements in Scripture. Saul disobeyed God's clear instruction, yet he still brought sacrifices. In other words, he said, "I didn't do what God asked, but I still showed up with something religious." And Samuel tells him plainly, God is not impressed by what you bring if you ignored what He said. This verse teaches us that obedience is not a substitute for sacrifice, and sacrifice is not a substitute for obedience. God would rather have a heart that obeys than hands that perform religious acts. Here is a hard truth we must accept. You can be active in church and still be disobedient to God. You can sing, give, serve, fast, pray, and still miss God if obedience is missing. Obedience is not about doing many things for God. It is about doing the right thing God asked. Saul thought sacrifice would cover his disobedience. But God was not looking for animals on the altar. He was looking for obedience in Saul's heart. So what is obedience? Obedience is aligning your will with God's will, even when it costs you something. Obedience is choosing God's instruction over your comfort. Obedience is trusting that God knows more than you do. Obedience is saying, "Lord, I don't fully understand this, but I trust you enough to follow you." And this is where many people stop short, because obedience often demands that we let go of control. And the truth is, obedience exposes who is really Lord in our lives, God or us. Deuteronomy 28 shows us that obedience attracts blessing and elevation. 1 Samuel 15 shows us that disobedience brings loss even when sacrifice is present. Saul lost his kingdom not because he didn't sacrifice, but because he didn't obey. This tells us something powerful. Disobedience cancels out spiritual privilege. God is not obligated to maintain what obedience did not build. Now let's talk about complete obedience. Moses said, "You must be careful to obey all of them completely." Not some of them, not the ones we like, not the ones that fit our plans. Partial obedience is still disobedience. Saul obeyed partially. He did some of what God said, but partial obedience cost him everything, because partial obedience is really delayed rebellion in disguise. God doesn't need us to edit His instructions. He needs us to follow them. Why does God value obedience so highly? Because obedience proves trust. When you obey God, you are saying, "I trust your wisdom more than my understanding," because obedience produces alignment. When we obey God, we place ourselves under His authority and under His protection, because obedience releases God's power. Many miracles in Scripture happened only after someone obeyed a simple instruction. Go, speak, give, wait, forgive. The miracle followed the obedience. Let's be honest, obedience is not always easy. Sometimes God asks us to forgive when we want revenge. Sometimes He asks us to wait when we want to rush. Sometimes He asks us to walk away when we want to hold on. But obedience is never wasted. Delayed obedience delays blessing. Disobedience invites correction. But obedience, true obedience, opens the door to divine favor. God is not looking for perfect people. He is looking for obedient hearts. He is not impressed by what we offer him while ignoring his voice. He is not moved by sacrifice that replaces submission. Today, God is asking the same question Samuel asked Saul: what makes the Lord happy? And the answer is clear. To obey is better than sacrifice. If we choose obedience fully, humbly, and consistently, God promises elevation, favor, and purpose beyond our own strengths. So today, let us not just hear his word, let us obey it, because obedience is the language God understands.
Thank you so much for watching. I truly hope this message has encouraged you and strengthened your faith. If this blessed you in any way, please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps this message reach someone else who may need it today. God bless you, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.